Well, hello everyone and welcome. Today we are on the topic of Google Search Console and figuring out how to use Google Search Console as just everyday marketers here to get the most value out of it, not as like a hardcore SEO. So a little bit of housekeeping. Post your questions into the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat as we go. If there's something I can respond to in real time, I will. Otherwise, we'll get to it at the end during the questions section, but please put it in chat while the question is top of mind to make sure that you don't forget it. Also, you will get these slides, so don't feel like you need to take screenshots or anything. We will make sure that you get a copy of the slides and a recording afterwards. Okay, for those who don't know me, a little bit about me. My name is Steve Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Brilliant Metrics. In addition to that, I do a fair amount of speaking and teaching. I used to be a software developer, so I get geeky sometimes about the technical aspects of SEO and digital marketing. And other than that, I do have 3 young children and a lovely wife. The children don't like to let me sleep, but moving on, enough about me. Brilliant Metrics is our company, and we are a B2B digital marketing agency. What makes us different from most others is that our clients really look to us not only to help facilitate their marketing, but also help them be better marketers. So we do a lot of training, we do a lot of educating. We are constantly helping our clients level up. And if that sounds interesting to you, please feel free to reach out to me or Chris Remington on our team. All right. Enough promotion. Let's talk about the meat of today. We're going to quickly give you a little orientation into Google Search Console. Then we're going to go through basically 3 areas of Google Search Console that you can be looking at as a marketing professional to make sure that things are running as they should and recognize opportunities for improvement. Those 3 areas are around indexing, what Google knows about your website, performance, how Google judges your website, and then finally the content that is on your website and recognizing opportunities to improve that content. So without further ado, let's jump into the user interface for Google Search Console. As you log in, you'll be brought to this main overview page. This kind of goes through those key areas here. Performance is really focused on content. Indexing is how well Google understands your site, and experience is how well Google judges your site. It can be a little judgy. The areas that to deep dive into these are over here on the left. So performance gets into the individual keywords or queries, pages, and some information about the individuals, where they're located, what kind of device they're on, as far as how well your website is performing in search. Indexing, this section here gets into how well Google understands your website. So is the Google bot, which is the little bit of code that bounces from page to page to page to page, are they able to index and understand your pages or not? We'll dive into what to look at on this screen a little bit later. These other sections are just more understanding of Google's ability to index your site. The next section is experience down here. This is Google's understanding of how good of an experience you're providing website visitors on your website. And we'll talk more about what that means there. We will not talk about shopping today. And we will hit a little bit on the security and manual action sections down here. Links just is it's not the best place to look at what other websites are linking to yours. And then settings is primarily just giving people access to your, giving either people or Google Analytics access to your Search Console data. All right, so now that we're oriented, let's talk about how to get the most out of this platform. The first thing we want to talk about is that indexing. The way that Google understands your website is that it has a bot, the Google bot, which is essentially just a bunch of servers sitting at a data center, acting like human beings clicking around the internet. There are 3 ways you can get Googlebot to visit your website. One is to submit a manual indexing request. In the early days of the web, this is what you did. When you launched a new website, you went out and submitted it to Google. We don't use this very often, if at all, anymore. The second way is to give Google an XML sitemap. So that is a list of all of the pages on your website, along with their categories, in a machine readable format. You're speaking to Googlebot in machine language in XML. Most content management systems, so WordPresses, Sitecore, Joomla, they will produce these automatically. You just need to know the magic address for them. We'll talk about submitting that a little bit later. And then the third way is they can stumble onto your site by linking from another website or another web page onto the internet. And this is the primary way that the Googlebot discovers pages. They'll ingest a page from some other website. They'll see that there's a link on that website to your website. They'll follow that link, and then the Googlebot will go and read that page. If there are any links on that page, it will go and put them in the queue to go and read the next time. As the Googlebot goes and reads these pages, the output goes in two places. It goes back to Search Console, where you can see how Google is interpreting your web pages. And it goes over here to search results, where users will discover your web page by searching Google for stuff and your page coming up in the results. Both of these rely on what's called the index, which is essentially a giant list of all of the web pages on the internet and what they're about. So your action item number one is to get that sitemap to Google. When you log into Search Console, you're going to want to make sure that you have this sitemap set up here. So what does that look like? Over here under sitemaps, you'll see there's an opportunity here to submit one or more sitemaps. For most websites, you're going to submit one and only one sitemap. There are rare instances where you will need to submit multiple sitemaps to the Googlebot. But for most websites, this will just be one. And this is a URL that is, it's a website address for an XML file. So browsers, when they show web pages, show HTML files. XML is a different language. It's very similar, but it is used to send basically database type data from one machine to another. And that's exactly what we're doing. Your web platform, WordPress or whatever, is sending a list of all of the web pages that you have published to Google for it to add those pages to its index so they can show up. If you haven't submitted this, you want to submit it. If you have submitted it, you want to take a look at what the status of this is and make sure that it is processed successfully and that the number of pages here align with the approximate number of pages on your website. So here we can see this was last read yesterday. It's discovered 219 pages, which is about right, and it has been processed successfully. So excellent. If you don't know the URL of your sitemap, you can start by, if you run WordPress, I can tell you what it is. It is yourdomain.com/wp-sitemap.xml. If you run WordPress and you have the Yoast plugin, it's this URL right here. So you want to pop that up in a browser window, make sure that it loads. And if it loads, then you can go ahead and copy that from your browser into this add a new sitemap field here to get that submitted. If you struggle with any of this, talk to your web development team about where your XML sitemap is. They'll send you a link. You can submit it here and get that indexed. Okay, so now Google's reading our sitemap, hopefully. What else do we need to be checking here when it comes to indexing? Well, we want to make sure that it's not stumbling as it's going and scanning each one of those web pages. So another thing to check to make sure that Google is understanding your web pages is your index status. You'll find this over here under indexing pages, and it'll give you a pretty bar graph here of what Google has been doing to index your site. The green bars should be getting taller over time. So here we can see we've got 213 pages indexed on May 15th. If we rewind to February 17th, we've got 173. So we've added, what is that, 40 pages over the course of the last month or so. That's a good thing. If this number is going down and it's not because you're deleting extra, cruddy pages off of your website, then something is going wrong. The gray bar on the bottom should be staying the same or getting smaller, or, these are pages that Google can't index for one reason or another. Some of these are okay. So if I scroll down here, I can see what those are. Pages with redirects are generally okay because Google will follow that redirect. A redirect is when you go to load one page and then your browser pops over to another one. Google can follow most of those redirects, provided they're the right kind of redirects. And usually if you've got, pages over here, that's okay. If you want to improve your search performance, you want to go and find who's linking to the wrong location and get them linking to the right location so that Googlebot doesn't have to follow that redirect for that link anymore. In doing so, you will get a slight boost to your rankings, but it's not going to be much to really worry about. Some of these other ones, though, are disconcerting. 404 not found errors are bad. So you'll want to click into here and see what are these pages here that are 404ing. These are links out on the web to pages on your website that don't exist. If they do exist, but not at this address, you want to get them redirected. If they don't exist, you want to try and figure out, well, who's linking to these dead links and try and get them cleaned up. Sometimes if you click into these, you can see a little bit more information about where it got that link from. So in this case, we actually have a page on our website that is linking to this non-existent one. We'll want to get that dead link cleaned up. In other cases, you just have to kind of hunt around and try and figure out where that link is coming from, or use a different tool to go and figure it out. Either way, 404s are bad. You want to clean up those 404s. You want to clean up anything that is no index or blocked by robots.txt that you want indexed. These are two ways you can tell Google to ignore certain pages on your website. And if you're telling it to ignore pages that it shouldn't be ignoring, well, then you probably want to get that fixed. So talk to your web developer about those pages. Soft 404s and 500 errors are also pages that you want to get cleaned up right away. And you'll find those again over here under pages. Scroll down. You might need to show more rows here to get all of them. But all of the different reasons why you might have a page blocked will show up here. Okay, so we've submitted a sitemap. We've checked to make sure Google can read our pages. Google can read our pages well. Everything is going well there. What's next? Well, next, we want to make sure that we are providing a good experience to website visitors, because Google has learned that if they want to stay competitive as a search engine, they need to only link off to websites that provide the best experience. Otherwise, people will use other search engines if they can get a better experience by clicking on those search results. So how do they do that? Well, they've got three metrics that they look at. When Googlebot goes and visits your web pages, Googlebot is not only figuring out what those pages are about, but it is harshly judging your website's experience. It's looking at three things. And they are these fun, obscure acronyms here of LCP, FID, and CLS. So LCP, or largest contentful paint. Here, the Googlebot is seeing how fast do the biggest things on your web page load, the stuff that takes up the most screen real estate. And if the things that take the most screen real estate load really quickly, that's a good experience, because then, it might fill in the gaps of some little things around the edges, but the users of your website are going to be able to get the big stuff, the stuff they came there to read or look at quickly. The second thing it's looking at is this first input delay. And that says, well, if my first input delay is good, then everything is usable right away on that web page. People can start clicking on the buttons even as other stuff is still loading. If it's bad, then everything is non-responsive for a split second, or maybe even a couple of seconds after that page loads. The third thing it's judging is this cumulative layout shift. If you've ever been on a web page and started reading something and all of a sudden the whole screen starts flipping around as it finishes loading that page and the thing you were reading jumps way down, that's a layout shift. And Google tracks the number and I don't know, the craziness of those layout shifts over time and gives you a score. And so you want to reduce the number of those layout shifts so that the stuff that loads on the page roughly stays put as somebody starts to read it, even if that page is still loading. So you can see this inside of Google Search Console, and you're going to find that down here under this page experience. Google splits out page experience into two sections, mobile and desktop. Ideally, in a perfect world, all of your URLs are judged as good by Google. Now, I'll be honest, most of our clients, and obviously not us, hit that benchmark of most of our URLs being good. But if I click here under this Core Web Vitals, I can see whether they are poor, needs improvement, or good. You at least want to get everything you can over here into this needs improvement category, if not in the good category. While it's over here in poor, you are getting dinged in your search rankings. So take a peek in here and see how you stack up. If URLs aren't good, you can see why down here with those fun little acronyms of CLS, FID, and LCP. In our case, we have CLS issues. So that means we need to go to our web developer and say, can we make it take a look and see what's causing these layout shifts and get that fixed? So again, take a look, both mobile and desktop. If more than a handful of your pages are poor, you're going to want to get that addressed with your web developer. If you want to invest more money into getting your search engine rankings even higher, then go ahead and ask the web developer to move as much as they can from needs improvement and poor all the way to good. We recently had a client upgrade their data center and improve the bandwidth to their data center. And in doing so, a bunch of their pages moved over to good, and we immediately saw improvements in rankings because of it. This makes a big difference. Okay. Along the lines of experience and indexing, there's two places that should never pop up in your Google Search Console. And those are down here under security and manual actions. Manual actions happen when either a machine or a human being at Google detects that you did something like really wrong. You tried to trick Google in some way, shape, or form, and they will apply a manual action to your account and pull your pages out of the search results. There should never be an issue here. And if there is, it means that you probably hired somebody for SEO that did some really shady things and they came back to bite you. Google also has an obligation to its users never to surface a search result that has a virus on it. So if you pop under security issues, it means that your site's been hacked and you're going to want to get that addressed right away. We rarely see issues on either of these, but they do happen. And it's good to make sure, especially if you've got an issue where you feel like you're really not performing in search, you definitely want to check and see if anything happened on either of these. So really bad things. If you have a manual action, you need to fire and sue your old SEO consultant and hire a new one right away to go and get things cleaned up. If you have security issues, you need to notify your web developer to get those, get that virus or that malicious code off of your website. Okay, now for the fun part, optimizing content. When you come into Google Search Console, it's going to give you a graph that goes up and down pretty wildly, usually on a weekly cadence. And it's really hard to spot trends or understand what's going on inside that graph. So we have found that to get effective information from this performance section, you really need to put this into some sort of motion here. The easiest way to do that is to simply come in here and set up a comparison date range. If your company is not really seasonal, you're going to want to run the last 3 months or last 28 days to the previous period, depending on, how much work you've done recently to your web page. If you have a lot of seasonality going on, then you'll want to do a year over year. So we usually do last 3 months or last 28 days, depending on how frequently we're coming in here to check on how things are doing. I'm going to run last 3 months for demonstration here, and you'll see that we can see how many clicks we got in the last 3 months versus the previous 3 months, how many impressions we got in the last 3 months versus the previous 3 months, what our click-through rate has been, and what our position is. For these three, a bigger number is better. For average position, a lower number is better. So first position being the top of your search results. By putting this into date comparison mode, I can see that we've lost some ground here in the last quarter. We were at 5,300 clicks in last quarter. Compared to this quarter, we're only at 47 or 4,800. That makes sense. We had multiple jobs posted last quarter, and that drives up our search engagement significantly when we do that. I can also see how many impressions we got and what our average click-through rate has been, as well as our average position. So in addition to not having those job postings out there, we see that our average position also went up, which means we lost some ground on some of our web pages. In a second, we'll dig into what those web pages might be and how we might fix that. So it's good to get a general picture, a general overview to see how search results have changed recently, just by looking at these numbers quarter over quarter. So look at those overall trends. Are you improving? Are you declining? And if you're declining or improving, then start digging in to the next section here on exactly how you might be improving or declining. And that brings us to action item number 6. Let's start looking at the queries, the keywords that are important to us and the keywords that have been changing most recently. So for this, I'm going to scroll down to these queries here. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. By checking these boxes and unchecking these boxes, I take the data off the graph. I also take the data off of the query list down here. Just going to zoom in a little bit and make this a little bit bigger. So for us, we have a blog post out there about the Peso model for marketing that happens to perform really, really, really well for organic search for us. Matter of fact, it is a big chunk of our searches. But I can see here that at least for the phrase Peso model, the number of clicks went down. It dropped 276 from this period to the previous period. Well, that's interesting, but that's not the only query we have for Peso. We actually have a bunch of these Peso posts here. So let's take a look at how Peso did overall. I can do that by putting a filter for that query. And when I do that for queries containing the word Peso, I get only those queries containing the word Peso. And here I can see that the last 3 months were down compared to the previous 3 months. We see the same thing with impressions. So we showed up in search results less, we got fewer clicks, but this is where things get interesting. Our position got better by 0.2, and our click-through rate got better. So for the queries we are showing up for, more people are clicking on our blog post. Well, what that says to me is that there are probably just plain fewer people searching for Peso model this quarter than there were last quarter. And if that's the case, I'm not too worried about the decline on that particular keyword, because we're still performing well and our position actually got better. Now I can flip down through here and take a look and see we have a branded keyword as one of our top queries, and that one went up period over period, which is especially good because we were recruiting this period. So that period over period improvement is a good thing, If I wanted to dig in a little bit more, I could check and see if there are other branded queries containing Brilliant Metrics here. And there are not in our case, but for most of our clients, there are a lot of different queries that could be branded. One of the tricks and use cases for Google Search Console is to track branded search queries over time. It's a really great proxy for how well your brand is performing. We talked about that a few months ago in our brand and branding webinar. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. I'll make sure a link to that is in the email that goes out after this webinar. Now I'm going to come down here to this digital strategy keyword. This one dropped by 15. If I just click in on that keyword, it'll automatically put a filter on that keyword up here, and I can see all of the data up here. And here we can see that total impressions dropped. We can see that clicks dropped. But here we can also see that my average position went up. It went in the wrong direction, and our click-through rate went down. It went in the wrong direction. So if this keyword is important to us, and it is, then we want to look at what can we do to improve this click-through rate and get it back where it needs to be. That's going to come through optimizing the title of the blog post or landing page that's linking to, the meta description for that page, which are the two things you can do to influence how it shows up in search. And then just brushing up that post will likely improve its search position, because Google will, rank things based on recency as well as relevance, as well as authority. Authority really comes from other things like mentions of your brand name and backlinks to your website. But recency and relevance can absolutely be updated just by simply refreshing that post. The other thing that we like to look at, so we took a look at queries. We took a look at our most important queries. We noted whether they were going up or down and why by looking at these numbers up here. We talked about query filtering these based on keyword in order to group things together and get statistics for a group of queries. But the other thing we like to look at is what keywords are on the move, which keywords have changed the most period over period. And you can get to that by simply, instead of sorting by the most clicks, sort by the most clicks difference. So here we can see that, again, Brilliant Metrics actually increased some of the most of all of the keywords, which is great. More people are looking for us. Yay. We can see that peso increased a bunch as well. I think that those just kind of shifted around, because when I flip the other direction, I also see the peso stuff also decreased. And then this digital media strategy keyword we dug into is another one that also dropped the most. Our GA4 keyword dropped a bunch because, well, GA4 was a really hot topic last quarter. Most marketers have responded at this point. So you can take a look and see what are your movers and shakers and your keywords by sorting on this clicks difference to get an idea there. And then any of these that you want to dig into, you can just click into here. And here we can see our click-through rate went through the floor, as did our average search position. And our impressions actually went up. So I was wrong. There are more people searching for this. We're just getting beat out by competitors. So take a look at your keywords on the move. The other thing that you might consider looking at is doing the same thing, but based on pages, and just doing that same set of searches here. So I'm going to remove my filter. I'm going to take a look at my pages and which pages have had the most clicks. No surprise that peso page has the most clicks here. And then which pages have changed the most. Either improvements, which are positive numbers, or declines, which are negative numbers. This is another way to check and see what has been improving or declining from a content perspective and which pages you need to work on. Okay, that's it. It's a nice short one here today. What questions do you guys have for me? Let's get those questions into the chat. Robin asks if the keywords we're showing you are organic, and where do you see paid keywords? And the answer is yes, all of these keywords are organic. If you want to look at paid keywords, all of that traffic, all of those rankings, all the results, all of that's going to be located in Google Ads, not in the Google Search Console page here. Now, you can pull both Google Ads and Google Search Console into Google Analytics, and I recommend you do if you're running paid search ads, as well as you're trying to optimize your organic SEO. Go ahead and link both of those with GA4 so you can see that data in Google Analytics in the same place. But otherwise, you have to log into these tools separately to see organic versus paid. Any other questions? Great. Well, I hope everybody got value out of today. If you do have further questions, please feel free to hit us up online. We'd love to help you out, and have a wonderful remainder to your week.